All right, so like I said, this project pane right here, what do they actually call it? I don't know what they call it. Path bar, status bar, sidebar. It's just called the sidebar. Oh, whoops. I was in the wrong thing. Nope. Show that. Show everything. All right. What do they call it? Command palette, tree view. Is that tree view? That is tree view. Okay. Tree view is what they call it. It's called a tree because everything sort of branches out from, like if you have your main folder and then you've got subfolders, like the main folder is my palm, right? And then my subfolders because they're attached to that palm or my fingers. And maybe the files are like my knuckles, that's the idea of the tree, right? The trunk and the branches and the twigs and the leaves. Everything expands out from one central source and is dependent on those sources. It's file structure. All right, so I can right click. I can add in files and folders from Atom, which is what we want. I'm going to make a new file in here. So it's telling me the path. So it's asking you to enter a path for that new file. I'll zoom in on it. All right, this path is where does this file live in this folder structure. And this is a relative path. All right, we're going to talk about paths today. And this is across the board probably the hardest thing for people to wrap their heads around. Every time I teach this class, which is going on like 6 years now, in various forms, understanding relative paths and discrete paths or absolute paths is the biggest head twister for some reason. A relative path is a path that depends on you knowing exactly where you are on the hard drive, okay, in the path structure, okay. So it's just knowing your location and then going relative to where your location is, all right. So it's like if I were to give you directions on how to get from here to the other side of the room, right? I'm going to give you directions from my position. That would be a relative direction, right? So if I'm walking, if I'm saying walk forward and turn right, right? Those are relative directions because they depend on you, right? There's nothing. They're not given. I'm not giving you anything outside of myself as a reference. Okay. Now, if I give you directions like walk east and turn south, then I'm using a reference outside of myself, and that would be an absolute direction or absolute path, essentially. Does that make sense? Relative paths depend on where you are, where the file is on the hard drive. Absolute paths depend on just the structure of the computer itself, right? You know everything. You know exactly where you are, down to the root, down to the very, very first folder in your hard drive, okay? All right, so if you see something like this that has nothing in front of it, it's just a folder name and a /. You know it's a folder because it has that /. If it didn't have the /, it could easily be a file, okay? That /, this is a relative path because there's nothing in front of it that gives you any sort of point of reference outside of itself. All right, so CSS style.css. So now what I'm doing is I'm creating a file called style.css in the CSS folder. Does that make sense? Yeah, does anyone not understand that? .css is the extension, so it's the type of file that I'm making. Style is the name. Yeah.
How did you get there?
Yeah. Okay. So what I did to do that was same way I made the folder. I just I moused over to the CSS folder name, right-clicked on it, and just hit New File. Okay, and then it gives you that. I'll just do it again. Okay. Let me close this. So that made a file called style.css during my hard drive, which I'm going to delete. Come back over here, expand it. There's nothing in there now. Oh, well, this DS store is a trash file. You can ignore them. The operating system makes them. So right-clicking, new file, it gives me this bar to create the file, style.css. If you were to delete that CSS / and just do style.css, it makes it in the root directory. Everybody see that? Okay. And that's not, you don't have to delete it and make a brand new one. You can actually just drag it up there and drop it. but just know that that's what it'll do. Bud 1%. I don't know what that is. Okay. All right. So come back over here. Oops, where's my mouse? See that it made, in the folder responsive website, it made CSS, style.css, index. That's good. All right, there's one other folder that we need. We're going to make an images folder. I usually abbreviate it to the HTML element name, which is img. Okay. I just take out the vowels. It's easier to type. You can write images, you can write pictures, you can write photos, you can write pics. I don't care. Right? You can write Santa Claus. This is just where your photos are going. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's best practice to call it something that is indicative of what it actually is. Okay? And best practice is just, common industry standard. Right? That way, if other people are looking at it or doing work in your website, they can reasonably assume that there are images in the folder called images. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. But practically, it'll work regardless of what you call it. It doesn't matter. All right, images. And we're going to put, images in there. So it doesn't matter right now. All right, and you can see it shows up over here. Nothing in it. It's fine. So everybody understands that this is a snapshot of the hard drive? Yeah? You can edit things in here, and it will show up in your actual folder. Everybody's good with that? So that's also something else that's difficult for some reason. Okay. My preferred way of working is to have my HTML on one side and my CSS on the other side, so I can see them at the same time. And it's really useful for when you write your CSS. Most people always write their HTML first. Okay, so you get your structure down, and then they do their CSS. I recommend working this way instead of clicking back and forth between these tabs. Okay. So how you do that is come over to the file you want to show up over here, grab the tab name, and drag it out. Now you see how it's like, oh, do you want to put it up there? Because it thinks I want to do horizontal split. Well, you can if you want to, but I'm going to do a vertical split. So I just mouse over until the highlight shows me the split that I want. Let go. And now I have them on both sides. Does that make sense? Everybody's good? Okay. Remember, this blue dot means that I've made changes that I haven't saved. All right. Your color may be different, but if you see anything right here, a dot or a box or whatever, then that just means you have changes you haven't saved. All right. So they won't update if you look at this in the browser, which is how we're going to check everything. I don't know what that was. Okay. Save it. Okay. All right, so real quick, just as a refresher, it's a lot of stuff, I know. This is HTML, all right? You know it's HTML because we have an element called HTML. Remember, the element is an open tag, which is the, here, I'm gonna collapse it so we can, it's an open tag, which is the very first HTML in the angle brackets. And a closing tag, which is a / and the element name in the angle brackets. And then you stick stuff inside, in between those two, just like bookends, right? Everybody remembers that from Thursday? Okay, if not, there's the video. If I collapse it like this, and you see the dot, like the little ellipse right there, these little 3 dots, that means there's stuff inside, okay? If you don't have stuff inside, you can't actually collapse it. Head also has stuff. You'll notice body, I can't collapse it. There's nothing inside the body. If you remember from Thursday, head is where all of the sort of settings for the web page go. That's what that meta char set, meta character set, UTF-8, is just Western Latin. It's the type of fonts we're going to use, the type of numbers, that sort of system that we're using. That's default. You can leave it. It's not completely necessary, but it's good to specify it. Helps the browser a little bit. This is all stuff the browser reads when it loads a page. Okay. Things that show up in the title are what show up in your tab in the browser. So anything you stick in the title shows up in the tab. Right? Doesn't actually get displayed on the page. It just shows up in the tab. Other things that we're going to stick in here, we're going to put a relative link to the CSS page or CSS file. You do that by just typing link, and then we get this nice autocomplete box. So when you start typing things and something else shows up down here, that's just autocomplete. It's trying to guess what you're typing and help you out a little bit. Okay, it's really useful. I use it a lot. You just hit enter, and it will autofill it, all the necessary stuff for you. It's asking what is it? It's a style sheet. href is an acronym for hypertext reference. Remember, HTML stands for hypertext markup language. So what we're writing is considered hypertext, right? So reference. This just means the path to the file. Okay, that path goes in quotes. So this is in the CSS folder. I'm looking for a file called master.css. I'm just going to edit that to say style, because that's the actual name of our file. Yep.
How did you get the original? I have the index.html, but I don't have anything on it. Was it a preset? Like
you just type HTML, and then you get a drop down.
Oh.
Here, I'll show you. Just delete all that, and then HTML, you get a drop down.
Yeah.
Just hit enter, and then all that stuff shows up. Something in the title, and then let's do, okay, back to our link. It just autofills, sorry, what?
How'd you get the link?
Just type link. Type link and you get a drop down. Okay. Just hit enter, that drop down. So style sheet, what you're gonna edit is that where it says master. Just whatever you named your CSS file, which style is just it's a default kind of industry standard a lot of people use for like the main style sheet. Something else we're going to change, we're going to get rid of that first /. That will mess some browsers up. Okay, it's better if you just don't have it. See again the blue dot because I've made changes and haven't saved it. You don't need this other stuff here, but it's fine to have it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just extra settings. It's like, what media are we showing it on? Well, we're showing it on screen as opposed to a VR headset. I don't know what else you would be showing it on besides the screen. But there will be other things in the future, so they kind of just build that in. Title, that's just more metadata you don't need, but you can put it in there. You can put the main style sheet, or it's a message to other developers that are going to be looking at your code. But you can just leave it the way it is. All right, so that's our link. And again, it's a relative link. So this path depends on knowing where the index file is. So it's relative to the location of the index file because we wrote it in the index file. So what it's saying is it's saying find a folder called CSS that is in the same level that this index file is at. Go inside that folder and load the style sheet. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Let me delete this. That's kind of annoying. All right. So saying, oh, look, there's a folder called CSS, style.css. I'm harping on it because, I swear to God, it confuses everybody. And I'm sure someone's going to be like, someone's going to not be able to link their CSS because they did it wrong at some point, I'm sure. Don't be that person. I don't care if you're that person. It's fine. All right, get used to hitting Command S all the time to save. So if you do make some changes, hit Command S to save. Just get used to that, okay? Because it happens a lot where someone's like, oh, the changes I made aren't showing up in the browser. And I go back and look at their files, and it's because they haven't saved their changes. So just Command S. You make a little change, Command S. Just get that muscle memory going, okay? So it becomes, wax on, wax off. Just Command S. Get the habit. I watch Karate Kid too much, I'm sorry. Okay, so the body is where all the content shows up on our page. It's where we want everything. Let's double check the requirements. And I'll edit the, I'm gonna sit down. Squats for days. Okay, so we're essentially making something that looks like this page. We're gonna have 5 different sections, which I have more. There's 1 section here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did I change it to Adobe XD? Oh, I did. Yay. So we're going to make these kind of different delineations, and that's something we're going to do in the CSS. It's really easy. But we also want our content to stay kind of here in the middle of the page. You'll notice the margins, the sort of empty space we have over here is equal on both sides. Okay, it's not to the left more or to the right more. This is what's called like a content margin. This is where all our content stays. And it's a pretty well established fact, I guess. It's kind of a fact. It's pretty well established that people are most comfortable reading stuff that is in the middle of a browser. Okay. It's also better for designers because you can't control the dimensions of the web browser when people are looking at it. So almost 100% of the time, it's easier to you make a more versatile design if you have this sort of content column that is a certain percentage of the width of the browser window. All right, and then just keep it in the middle. That just makes it easier to read because it works. I mean, it works at all these different dimensions for my browser, right? It's just easy to read. It would look weird if it was like over here and there's a bunch of empty space here or whatever. We generally just stick it in the middle. You don't always have to do it, but that's what we're going to do for this one. So we're going to create sort of this overall rule that is going to make everything stay in the middle. But then we're going to have these 5 different sections, and we'll go into it here in a minute. So let's kind of look at how we're going to do this. All this stuff needs to show up in the body. Let's see, 5 images. Oh yeah, we're going to do that too. Distinct sections. And then we're not going to do the pages part. We're just going to do sections and have one section jump out to have links in the section. So I'll edit that to be different. All right, so let's, when I'm writing HTML, I kind of figure out like what I need it to be, like how I need to organize the page. And then I work from general to specific. Okay, I don't try to just work from top to bottom and make everything specific and line up. It's like writing an outline for a paper. All right, does anyone write outlines when you write papers, or do you just write? Who does research papers? Anybody ever? Oh my God, this is college. You guys not do research papers? Who writes papers for their classes? What kind of papers are they? Opinion papers? Are they really? Like reflections?
Yeah.
So you don't have, oh my God. Ugh, so it's like an extended Facebook comment, essentially?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm an old man. Okay. Sorry, I did a lot. I was very close to a philosophy degree when I got done with school, or when I had to stop school. So I have some very specific ideas about how to write papers. Okay, so well, that's the analogy I have. I'm trying to think of another one. I mean, it's an outline. It's an outline. Do you do outlines for notes? Okay, you guys know what outlines are, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's like a table of contents, essentially. So we're going to start from the outline mode, right, or method. So you're going to do like your main sections, and then you're going to fill in the next level of detail, from that section. So you're working from sort of big and general to smaller and specific, but you're not doing it, top to bottom. You're doing it in stages. So first stage will be big and general. Second stage is, medium and a little more specific. The third stage is smaller and a little bit more detail. And the fourth stage is, much, much smaller, extra small. T-shirt sizes for some reason are going through my head. Extra small and, much more detail. Does that make sense? Those are the passes that we're going to do on this. All right. The stages. Okay, so we need 5 sections, right? Well, luckily for us, there is an HTML element. It's a semantic element, which just means the name of the element gives you an idea of what it's used for. There's one called section, so we're going to use it. So we're going to use a section. So I'm going to blow your minds a little bit, all right? Section, we can just do that. Yay, we got one. And we can come down here and be like, oh, I need another one. Yay, section, blah, blah, blah. And just do this 5 times, right? It's fun. No, it's terrible. Don't do it. You can do that. That's okay. But that Emmet plugin that we installed gives us the ability to write HTML formulas, which makes things go a lot faster. So I need 5 sections. Section times 5. Oops, hit tab. Gives me 5 sections. That's really nice. There are much more complicated formulas, like if you knew exactly what you needed to, all the sub elements and stuff that you needed inside of this, you could string it all together, but we're not going to go that far. Okay.
I can't get that to work. Is that
Do you not have Emmet installed?
well, no.
Did you do section times 5 and then hit tab?
Oh, tab.
Tab, yeah, sorry, tab. Okay, working. All right, so you can do. I really would like you guys to use the Emmet at least that I use as I'm making this, which is part of why I'm recording it. But if that's just a level of complexity you don't want to add to what you consider to already be overwhelming and complex, totally cool. Just write out, just do section, enter, and then just do that 5 times. That's fine. Okay, it's up to you. All right, so we're gonna go section times 5. Oops, damn it, I keep hitting enter. So section times 5, yay! In the first one, it's gonna indent for you automatically, which is great. Make sure that your indentations are consistent, okay? Siblings should all be on the same level, so they should all line up. Children should be indented 1 step from their parents, etc. Okay? That goes back to the parent-child relationship that we talked about on Thursday in terms of nesting. I just see some blank faces, so. No? Okay, good. All right. What do we need inside of this? So this section is going to be responsible for the colors, okay? The colors that go all the way across the screen, all right? And that's all that section element is going to do. It's going to organize everything, but we're going to give it a special identifier that'll do the colors for us, okay? Now this identifier is actually called an ID. ID and then equals, and then in quotes, we're putting a string. Anything in quotes in coding is a string, so it's not text that the browser understands, it's just a word you stick in here. So this one's going to be, I don't know, I'm going to do blue. You can do whatever you want. I'm just going to give an ID called blue. This isn't going to do anything yet. This is just for me so that I know. Okay. ID blue. I'm going to come down here. And since I'm typing a bunch of these, I'm putting multiple cursors by holding Command and just tapping. So tap 1, tap twice, 4 times. Gives me multiple cursors so that I can edit things.
How are you tapping?
With my trackpad, like you would click with a mouse.
Can you do command?
Yeah, hold command, and just click. You could also just click. I just have tap set up, so is that working for you?
Yeah.
Okay. That lets you just type a bunch of stuff out on a bunch of lines, so you don't have to. It's all about efficiency. It's all about typing as little as possible. All right. Okay. And then you just hit escape to get out of it and go back to your first one. ID blue, purple, I guess. Purple. So is it pink then? Pink. Did I just do a gradient? I did just do a gradient. Orange and yellow. Okay. So there are my different colored sections. You don't have to do these. You can organize them however you want. You could do alternating black and white. You could do just something to like make the sections look different from each other. Okay, this is essentially what I want. You could do images if you wanted to. It's up to you. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to come in and hit enter and tab in here real quick. In terms of organization, like spacing and stuff like that, it doesn't matter too much. If it's easier for you to kind of read and understand, you can put spaces between each of these lines. That's okay. It's not going to change how it works. All right. Let's go back up here. Okay. All right. So inside ID blue, the next level down that we need. So that was our first big general level. That was our foundation. Okay. Now we're going to add another level slightly instepped from that, which is a little bit more specific. That is going to be the element that controls this content margin that I talked about. All right, that keeps everything lined up on the left and gives an absolute bounds on the right before content then goes down to another line. All right, so it's the space, the invisible space in the middle that constrains all of our content. All right, does that make sense to everybody? All right, I can make it visible for you too here. I'll show you. All right, so see there's a thing called content here. Let me come up to this one. Content. All right, so everything inside this green is that content margin. The orange is, or the content column. The orange is the margin. Does that make sense? All right. Cool. Let's do this. Oh, what's broken? Oh, my favicon broken. Yeah, well, that's fine. Okay, so this is going to be, we're going to use just a generic div for this. All right, you don't have to use anything specific for it. So div is the most generic element that you can possibly have. You use it for anything and everything. It's a box. It's a container. I'll say the word container a lot because that's what it does. It contains other things. So div, and here's where Emmet comes into play. I know that I want to. So I set up an ID for the sections. Another way of doing an identifier is through classes, something called a class. IDs are used for specific elements. So if you have characteristics, like CSS characteristics or rules that you only want to apply to like one or two specific things, okay, then you would use an ID. Classes are for like general things, like if you're going to reuse it a lot. Usually it's only a couple of settings, okay, a couple of rules. So we're going to set up a class. I'm sorry. We're going to set up a class, and we're going to denote this div class with that period. Period means class in CSS. When I write it like this, I'm writing an Emmet formula. So there's two ways that we can do this. There's the normal vanilla way, so div, and then come in and go class, and then class name, which is going to be content. Okay, so that's the normal way. All right, kind of the long way of doing it. A faster way of doing it is div dot content. Okay, and then hitting tab, and just auto makes it for you. It's less to type. You do it whichever way is comfortable for you. Okay, if you want to ignore Emmet, totally fine. Emmet just makes things a little easier sometimes. But here's the thing: we need this div class content in all of these sections. All right. So before I do that, I'm gonna drop my cursor in all these sections. Div.content tab. Now I have it in all those sections. Okay. Remember, you don't have to work ahead. You don't have to work alone. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. I'm just not going to stop for questions. Okay. All right. So div content. This content is going to give us that margin. That's great. And that margin is going to be consistent for all of them. We stick it inside of the section for color because we're going to tell color to go all the way across the horizontal width of the screen. All right. And we want content to not go all the way across the horizontal width of the screen. So we have to stick content inside of that. Does that make sense? It will make sense as we build this. If it doesn't. Does that not make sense? I mean, do you guys understand? Like this color, we need to go all the way across. Okay. If we were to stick content, that content class, if we were to stick it outside of the color, then, well, here, actually, I can show you what it'll do. So, okay, so let's come here. So div ID 1 is giving me that background color. All right, over here. Right? Rules I have set up right here. Background color, and it gives me that color. Div ID 1. Now, section class content is giving me a specific width. And don't worry about the units right now. I'll talk about that. I wrote this a long time ago, so that's kind of wrong. Should be just do 75. Oops, 75 vertical width. That make it a little wider. I did make it a little wider. Let's go 60. Okay. Yeah, that's better. So this is specifying the percentage of the viewport width, which is just the browser window width, that the content column should take up. Now, if I put a background color in here, background color, you know, whatever that, what was that background color? 97CCFF. Oops. 97CCFF. All right, see what it does? So that's that background color. It doesn't stretch all the way across. It stays right inside of that margin. It just looks gross, okay? So we don't do that. No thanks. Okay. So the color, because it goes all the way to the outside of the edges of the window, needs to be on the element that is the parent of content. Okay. All right. So then we just need some stuff. So we need some content. I don't know. Let's stick that stuff in a group. So we're gonna stick it in a div. We're gonna keep it together so that we can move it around if we need to. So I'm just gonna put it in a div. You don't really need to name this thing div anything right now. But let's go like, there are a number of built-in ways to handle typography. So text. There are heading tags, H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The smaller the number, the bigger the font. All right, so an H1 is like, would be considered like a headline or a heading. Or an H6 would be considered, you know, subtext or something. There's also a P element, paragraph. It's a paragraph element. Okay, that's for just generic default text. That shows up at whatever the default font size is for your browser, which is usually 16 pixels or 16 point. It's not really points, but it's pixels. So we're gonna use let's use an H3. So we'll do H3, and then we'll do just something. This is an H3. I don't care what your content says right now. And then a P tag. The P tag, we're just gonna make lorem ipsum, which is built in. So you just type in lorem, hit enter, and it's gonna give you a chunk of nonsense Latin. Okay, it's just filler text. You are gonna put something else in there. This needs to be a portfolio for you, so you'll stick in text of yourself. But for now, as we're kind of building out the website, this works. All right, so I'm going to save that, and then we're going to kind of look at it in the browser just to, I mean, there's no rule set up, but we're going to look at it in the browser. It's going to be really generic. This is what it looks like in the browser, generic, because there's no special styling or anything. You get that by just right-clicking in the HTML page and hitting open in browser, okay? So super generic, but that's fine. We don't have any styles or anything set up yet. That's okay. All right.
What was the shortcut again for that lorem?
Just type in lorem. So lorem and then enter. And then you can cut and paste. Like you don't need to have that much text if you don't want that. Or you can have more. You can just type lorem again. If you want to get like spacing between paragraphs, just do another P tag. So P lorem. And then if we go look at this in the browser, it gives me automatic padding. That space is called padding. We'll talk about spacing here in a little while. All right, so each of your sections is essentially going to be a variation of this, okay? You're going to have a div that organizes your content. So you're going to have a section that does the color, div class content, which gives you the bounds that all your content has to be within. And then you're going to have another div inside of that that is like a grouping of all of your content. Just if you're going to group something in Photoshop or Illustrator. Does that make sense? Group elements together as a unit so that you can move them around individually. Okay? All right, but what if I want 2 columns of text, you ask? Well, I say, you need 2, sorry, that was dumb. You need 2 divs right next to each other that are siblings. And then we're going to use something in CSS to make them show up side by side. So I'm just going to copy this, You can collapse it and copy it and hit paste, and it will copy the whole thing. So I have these two. Now, right now, they're going to show up on top of each other. Okay. This is called inline styling, or not inline styling. Sorry. This is called inline. This is just how things are by default organized and displayed in HTML. Inline just means everything shows up top to bottom, left to right, full width in a line. Okay. Inline just means in a line. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to be messing with some something called Flexbox later that will let us more easily move things around, but inline is just the default way of showing stuff. All right, let's go on to our next section. Now, another big component of this assignment is flexible images, okay, or fluid images. These are images that will adjust their sizes automatically when you resize the browser. Okay, so you just load one image asset, so one picture, and then the browser and the CSS rules change it automatically. This is much more efficient than trying to load 6 or 7 different images at different resolutions and different sizes. Okay, it just decreases load time for the page, which is a much more pleasant experience because nobody has patience anymore. All right. Back in the day, it used to be okay to wait 3 or 4 seconds for a web page to load. Now, people don't want to wait 10 milliseconds for a web page to load. Like, it's just, yeah. Expectations. I mean, I don't want to wait either. All right, so we're going to, there's a very specific kind of way we do this, and we do it all in CSS, but we still need to set up the image in HTML. So how you handle a fluid image is you make a div. All right, we're going to give this div a class name. Or I guess you're coughing, not really sneezing. Well, whatever is customary for coughing. Don't die. I don't.
I was checking on my gum.
Oh, okay. Please don't die. There you go. We're going to make a class name because we're going to reuse these settings for the images a lot. So I'm just going to do a div, and I'm going to call it. We'll just call it fluid image. Or you know what? That's just long to type. We'll just call it fimage. Fimge. Fimge. All right. It's Norwegian. Fimge. That sounds Norwegian actually. Fimge. F image. Yeah, fu image. All right. So this is what we're going to set up. Okay. We're going to set up a div called f image. Now here's some more crazy Emmet stuff. Okay. If you're writing Emmet, you want to generate a lot of different containers that have the same characteristics. So maybe I want a bunch of f image divs that also have an image element inside of them. Like I want 4 of them, right? Instead of writing writing this out, instead of going div class f image, instead of doing that, which you could do that and then copy it and then paste it a bunch of times. There, it's done. Yay! You can do that. That's fine. You can tell by my enthusiasm that I really like that method. You can also go. This is an Emmet formula. This says div class fimage, so it's going to make a div class fimage with a left-facing angle bracket with an image times 4. So this is just saying that make a div with a class fimage that has an image element inside of it. That left-facing angle bracket, the alligator? Are they both alligators? They're both alligators. What, one's like running away and one's eating? I can't remember what the thing was. 5th grade was a long time ago. I don't remember. What? Do you remember, Carrie?
I think it eats
Yeah, I don't remember either. Anyway, that left-facing angle bracket. Now I can't even remember if it's greater than or less than. Oof. That just says that the next thing that follows is a child of the thing that came before. Okay, so that says that this img, this image, is a child of div class fimage. Cool. Make sense? All right. Hit tab. Oh, whoops. That didn't work. What did I do wrong? Oh, right. Sorry, I put this in the wrong place. There we go. We need it there. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, you got to put the multiplier on the parent, not the child. If you do it on the child, it makes 4 children inside of 1 parent. But you could do this too, and this would give you 4 images inside of 4 divs called fimage, but that's not what we want. Anyway, so you put the multiplier, the bit of math, fimage inside of, or 4 fimage divs that have an image tag inside of them. This is how that should read. Hit tab. There we go, tab. So that gives me, it doesn't do my indentation, but it gives me everything I need in there. So you just come in and indent it appropriately. What is something you, okay, look at the image element as opposed to all the other elements that we've written, and what is something that you notice that is different? What is different about its structure as compared to all the other elements we've done so far? I don't know if I really want that. Anybody? What did I say were the 2 necessary things for an HTML element? What 2 tags? Think bookends. What's necessary on a bookshelf if you don't want your books to fall over?
Closing.
There's no closing tag for the image. Images don't need closing tags because they're self-contained. Because you provide a path to the actual image and it just loads the image. There's nothing that goes inside the tag. Does that make sense? All right. So it's not technically a container. Okay. Everything else is a container because you can stick stuff inside. You can stick stuff between the open and the close tags. Okay. So image is not a container. That might show up on the final as a trick question. Write it down. It'll be something like, is the image element a container? That would be like, or is the image element, can you put something inside the image element? Be like, no. That's what you say. Okay, sorry. I don't have any images yet, so we don't have a path, but we know that the first part of the path is going to be what? Anybody remember? Where do our images live? Where are they going to live? They're not there yet. On the hard drive, yep. But where specifically in the hard drive? In the images folder. So we type in images and then a / to tell it that it's a folder. So they're all going to live inside of images, the images folder. And it's a relative link, so we just type in images folder. Depends on where this is. Okay. Henri, do you have your hand up or you just? Okay. You're sneezing?
I was about to.
Okay. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did I steal it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Command S to save. I hate that blue dot. All right. So we don't have any images yet. Let's get some images. Let's throw some images in there. All right. Let me open a new tab. You guys are all sick. What's going on? Don't get me sick. I get enough of that from my 4-year-old in the petri dish she goes to every day. Hey, there's a fun one. Yeah. Those 2. Not my daughter, I wish. These are, actually, I've been thinking about making these, actually. So there's cameras attached to each of these paws, and then they feed into a display. And what it's supposed to be is like letting you see at the level of like ants or bugs in the grass. And then this is letting you see like a giraffe would see. So like, having your head up on a tall neck, essentially walking around like that. It's a periscope is all it is. But it's to give you like the feeling of being, of embodying another animal or something. So, yeah, they're pretty neat. I keep meaning to make them for my daughter. Maybe I'll do it this summer. Here's a good one. I need one more. These are all images that show up in my desktop. These are my desktop images. It's my folder of like 2014 items. I've been collecting them for a while. It's just weird art stuff or whatever that I find. Zardoz. Has anyone seen Zardoz? No, it's such a weird movie. Sean Connery. Oh boy. Sean Connery in essentially like a bikini, like a Speedo for like the entire movie. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. There we go. I'm spending way. What's this from? Anybody know? You guys are too young. Doom. It's the original art box art for Doom, the game Doom. Hey, what's this? From which movie? You know it's a Batmobile, but you don't know which movie? The old one. Yeah, the Tim Burton 1989 one. Hand colored. Dang. Why do I care so much? I don't know. I really don't know why I care, but I do. Yeah, there we go. That's a good weird one. All right. Okay. So now we have images. Look, images. I'm gonna rename them though. So you can just right click on it and go to rename. It just makes it easier to mess with. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, and I don't care what order, you know. You don't have to do this. You can give them actual names or whatever. It's up to you. I just do this because it's easier to write the code for them. All right. They're all different sizes, but that's fine. So 1 JPEG, 2 JPEG, 3 JPEG, 4 JPEG. This is going to be 1.jpg. There's an E in there. 2.jpg. 3.jpg. Oops, not Jeep. 4.jpg. Okay. All right. So I've got all my images loaded. Let's go back and look at the page. There's all the images. All right. You can see they're all different sizes. All right, and they are not going to adjust themselves. It just makes it. The content is there, and we have to then just go over. Now the rest of the images are kind of small, so they're not the best example, but so they don't adjust them size. They're just straight vanilla images. Okay, we haven't done anything to them. This is the last bit of the demo I'm going to do, and then I'm going to let you guys work. Okay, because the other sections are just a variation on these. All right. So in order to get now we need to start doing some CSS stuff. Okay. So in order to get those images to, well, let's work the same way we did with the HTML. We'll work generally and then specifically. So we've got our link set up. Let's set up our, there's a couple of things we need to do. Browsers by default, most browsers do have a user agent style sheet, which is like a built-in CSS sheet of some very, very simple styling rules that they use for just straight HTML. What that translates to is this little bit of space that we have right here and the space we have at the top. All right, this is default margin and padding. It's just to make straight plain HTML readable. Otherwise, this text, if you didn't have it, this text would be touching the border, the left and right border, and the top border, and it's difficult to read it. It's difficult to read text if you don't have space around it. Okay. So we're going to override that a little bit, and it's on the body. So I always just write. I'm targeting the body. When I write something in CSS over here, you're targeting these element names. Or you're targeting the special identifier that you've added to that element. So you're either targeting the ID or the class. Okay. By default, your coloring of your text, your syntax highlighting will be the same. So body element will be colored pink because the HTML element over here is colored pink. All right. My IDs will show up blue. My classes will show up orange in my CSS. The structure for writing CSS is different than HTML. We don't have the angle brackets. You just write the element name, and then you have these curly braces. Oops. All right, these are curly braces. as opposed to angled braces or brackets, curly brackets, braces, brackets, same thing. Or square brackets. These are curly, these are square, these are angles. Okay? All right. So these curly braces, and then you just put stuff inside the curly braces. All right? All your rules for your CSS go in here. Every line, every rule needs to end in a semicolon so that the browser knows that the rule is over and it needs to go on to the next rule. Okay? These rules are just the settings we're going to use. So I'm going to override the default margin. I'm just going to set it to 0 and padding to 0. Padding and margin are the ways you add space around elements. Okay? I'm just setting them to 0. Just, what?
Like what you type, you can't see. It says margin.
You can't see that? Oh, sorry. So margin 0, padding 0. You just put a semicolon so that it knows to go to the next line. That little, this gray symbol right here, you can't see, that's a line ending. Okay, it just means go to the next line. It's one of those invisibles. The dot are just spaces. Okay, so overrode the padding. So now, with that, and I save it, I can come back to my browser. See how it went over there? I don't know why it's not going to the top. What's going on up there? Oh, because of the margin on the H3. Okay. So it went over to the left, which is what I thought it was going to do. Okay.
What did padding do?
Nothing really right now. Not yet. It's just good to override both of them. So that, because what'll happen is if you don't, and you're working and you're adding padding and margin, it'll like add on to the padding. So it'll, if you add 3 padding, 3 rem or what, whatever unit you're using of padding, it'll actually look like 6 or 7 or something, and you can't figure out why because it doesn't always tell you that it's the agent, the browser style sheet doing it. So I usually just at the very top just override it, get rid of it, done. Don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, now let's go to our section ID blue. I usually just work top to bottom in the HTML like this. So I did body, now I'm gonna do my section. So there are different symbols that we use. We used a period for a class over here when we were writing Emmet. We use a hash for an ID. So blue, so you just do a hash and then the ID name. So I just, the symbol for this ID is hash and then blue. Curly braces. We're going to set the background color to that blue. You bring up your color picker, change it to hex down at the bottom. Oops. So it'll default to RGB. You want it on hex. And then we're just going to find a blue that we like. I'm kind of a sucker for weird pastels. It keeps going away. Command-Shift-C. If you have your color picker plugin installed, it's Command-Shift-C. All right. And then semicolon at the end, so the line is over. Okay. Now, if we go back and look at it, it's not going to show up, or it's not going to. Okay, it does show up, but it's not going to show up exactly the way we want it to. Sorry, I got some in my eye. It shows up because there's actually content in that section. If I come down to a section that doesn't have content, like pink, I come down here and do pink real quick. Pink, background color, X. And I'm working quick because I just want to show this to you. Pink. Let's make it a slightly redder pink, salmon. All right. Okay, so if I come back and we look for pink, there's no pink because there's no content. All right. Elements will not show up if there's not actually something to display. All right. It's there, but it's not showing up because there's nothing inside of it to give it dimension. All right. If there's no content inside of the element, it has no width or height. It has no dimension. Okay, unless you specify. But anyway, let's come back up. It's a problem for later. So that's blue. All right, blue's taken care of. Let's do our next one, which is content. And this is going to be general for everything. So it doesn't matter where you stick it, but I'm going to stick it up here just to keep things organized. I like my CSS style sheets to be organized general to specific. So content, the class is just that period. So that says this period means class. See how the colors are the same? All right, class is a period in CSS. Now this we're going to give a width. We're going to say width, and we want it to be 60% or whatever width you pick, I don't care, of the viewport width. Okay, so 60 VW. VW is a unit that means viewport width. So 60% of the browser window width. All right, this is a relative unit because it depends on the width of the browser for its dimension. Percentages are relative units. 100% of 3 is less than 100% of 10, but they're both 100%. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. I know it's simple, but I just want to make sure it makes sense. All right. So width. This should now. What do you think this is going to do now? What's going to happen to all of our content? It's going to squish, but it's going to squish over to the left. Okay, it's not going to squish because I didn't save it. See? Haha, I fell prey to the blue dot. All right. Save that, get rid of that blue dot. Boom. It's all over on the left right now because we haven't told it how to handle its margins. So it's like, oh, you want 60%? Okay, then you're going to be all the way over to the left, and then that 40% is going to show up over here on the right. Okay? What we need to tell it now is to split that extra 40% and put it equally on the right and the left. You do that by setting the margin for content to be, well, all right. Margin and padding can take values in a number of different ways. 1, 2, 3, kind of 3 different ways, really. You can set, well, so on every element has a top, a right, a bottom, and a left. And that's the order in which you set them. Okay, it's clockwise. Starts at noon or 12 and works its way around. So top, right, bottom, left. Okay. When you set padding and margin or position or whatever, you can set it in, you can either set all 4 of them at once in a line, right? So you set 4 different values separated by a space, or you can set top and bottom together. So you can set one value that gets applied to top and bottom. You can set another value that gets applied to right and left. Or you can just say margin, like you can give one value and it gets applied equally to all 4 sides. Okay? How this works out practically, I can go margin, 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixel, 4 pixel, and this is going to apply 1 pixel to the top, 2 pixels to the right, 3 pixels to the bottom, 4 pixels to the left. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, let me know. It's 4 different values set to top, right, bottom, left.
It's going to be really uneven.
Yeah, super uneven, but I just want you to know, I mean, the values don't matter right now. Right now it's just, this is the same thing as writing margin, margin top, 1 pixel, margin right, 2 pixels. To writing it, that's not. It's writing it all out. It's the same thing. Margin bottom, 3 pixels, margin left, 4 pixels. That is tedious and long and boring, and God, I was going to kill myself typing all that out. Or not, whatever. It hurt. Don't do that. I mean, just get used to setting it one way like this. Okay. So the other way you can do it, we could do 1 pixel, 2 pixel. This is going to do 1 pixel for top and bottom, 2 pixels for the left and the right. Does that make sense? When you give it 2 values, it breaks them up into groups. Vertical groups, horizontal group. Does that make sense? Yeah?
How do you know which one's which?
The first one is always going to be top and bottom, or top. Or you can have 1 value, and that sets 1 pixel for all 4 sides. Okay? All right. So we're going to break it into 2 groups. We're going to do a vertical group and a horizontal group. Okay? So we want our vertical group to be 0. We want no margin on the top and the bottom. We want our horizontal group, our left and our right, to be figured out automatically. So we type in auto. So it takes the remainder, that 40%, and it splits it in half. It applies it equally to both sides. Cool? All right, save it, come back, moves it to the middle. It's magic. It's magic. Magic. Okay. Yeah. Sweet. All right. Okay. So let's move on then. Awesome. All right. So then we're gonna kind of come down to this div. At this point, I kind of do want to give these divs an ID. I think. So I'm gonna do ID equals I don't know about me for the first one. Second one, ID more about me. No, I was just gonna call it about me as well. So I'm doing two IDs. You could do a class. You could do two IDs. It doesn't matter really. It's just it's practice. Like it's just habit for most people. They're kind of interchangeable how you use them and what you do with them, but it's fine. You know, two IDs for two elements that have the same characteristics is totally cool. You could do two classes, whatever. It doesn't matter. Actually, there's another way. Well, no, we wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, so we'll do this. Okay. So, what do I want to do with this? I'm giving these IDs because I want to be able to target these H3s and this P tag, these P tags here, to be able to style them. Okay. I could give the IDs to the H3s and the paragraph tags. That would also be fine. There's multiple ways to approach the problem. This is just how I usually do it. So I'm going to say ID about me, and then I'm going to do that bracket again. Because what this bracket is saying, this left-facing angle bracket is saying, look for the child. All right, this one means child of the about me element, the ID, the element that has the about me ID. Okay, so we're going to look for the H3, and then on the H3 we're going to do some styling. We just need to make some style choices. This space up here is, I know, is being added by some margin that is automatic to the H3. I'm inspecting the browser when I do this. I right click and I go to inspect. This lets me see how the browser is interpreting my HTML. This is like debugging, finding the problems. Okay, so if anything goes wrong or something's not showing up, don't go to your code and just stare at it and hope that it's going to jump out and go, hey, I'm wrong. Okay, because it's not. All right, inspect it in the browser and kind of see, oh, all right, so this element has, what rules are being applied to this element? Oh, these rules are being applied to this element, you know, and so forth. If you don't have a lot of screen real estate, that you can, you know, and having it on the bottom is a little tedious for you. You can move it over to the right by clicking that button. Kind of slide it over a little bit more. You know, you can adjust it quite a bit to get a sense of how it works. All right, so I know section blue has a background color being applied. That's it. I'm going to open up that. Div class content has a width and margin. And then div, sorry, my wife texts me. I'm always worried that it's like kids are going to the hospital or something. Oh, okay. Not going to the hospital, that's good. I freaked out last night. Like I was coming home and I didn't know if she was home yet. So I checked her location to see if she was home. And it, like, for some reason was telling me that she was at the hospital. Like, and her dot was like kind of where the emergency room is, and she had both kids. And I couldn't, like, I was calling her and she wouldn't answer and she wouldn't answer and she wouldn't answer. So I was like driving really fast to get to the hospital. And then as I got closer, I checked her location again and it had her at home. It was like a glitch or something, you know, and she's the kind of person that like mutes her phone and then leaves it in a room and forgets where it is. So we had a discussion about home with the kids, keep your phone around you. Anyway, she had a friend over, so it was like 5 kids running around screaming. But anyway, I was getting like the heart palpitations from thinking about the anxiety from that last night. It's freaky when like you got little kids and you're like, shit, they're in the emergency room. That's not good. Okay, what are we doing? Right, debugging. So you can just check to see, like, here's your HTML and here's your styling. See what's being applied to what. Now I know this H3 this white space up here is being caused by the margin on the H3. Margin in this inspector, this debugging mode, shows up orange. Okay? Padding shows up green. All right? Elements show up blue. It's hard to see. There we go. They get highlighted blue. Okay? So that's that purple. This bottom white space that's kind of pushing that image down is probably some pad. Yeah, there we go. It's margin on this p tag. All right. So this is part of that user agent style sheet stuff. All right. This is just default spacing and stuff that's added. And they just got to know it's there and know that that's what's causing it. And you can very easily see it if you inspect and come here. So if you have problems with your HTML and your CSS, it's not looking like you expect it to, inspect it in the browser first. Inspect the page. Look at it here, kind of just mouse over your elements and get a sense of how things are being applied before you come ask me, okay? Because this is all I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up in the inspector and look at it and see how things are lining up. Cool?
So how do you know what's wrong with it though? You know where is wrong?
It'll give you an idea of it. I mean, like this is telling me the agent style sheet stuff over here. Most browsers anymore are good about showing you the agent style sheet stuff. Chrome will, I think Firefox does, Safari does. So if I have it clicked on it, it's telling me margin before is 1em, margin after is 1em. If you see anything like that, like where there's a unit and it says margin and it's showing up orange and it's pushing it down, then you know that margin is doing something, right? How you fix it is you can come over here and just click in here and be like, oh, well, margin 0, get rid of it. Hey, margin 0, got rid of it. You can just test things out over here on the right side. But it doesn't actually write to your HTML, it just tests it out in the browser. So if I were to refresh it, like if I do margin 0, and then I come up and reload the page, it goes back to the default. So, okay, all right, so let's take off that margin on the H3. So we'll go margin 0, come back. I saved it, Command S, come back, reload it. Now that touches the top, okay? But it's still touching, which is gross, so we need to add some space to push it down. We're gonna add space to content. How we do that and we keep the blue background is by using padding, right? So margin and padding are the two ways to add space. Margin pushes other elements away, all right? So if you add margin to something, if it's next to another element in the HTML, it goes, get away from me, right? Walk away, go over there. It's like a buffer, okay? Padding pushes elements on the inside. But, and here's the weird thing, padding will change the actual dimensions of your container. Just, it's a dumb glitch in how browsers render padding. It's actually the one thing Internet Explorer did right was that it didn't do that. But anyway, just know that padding pushes things on the inside. Margin's gonna push things away and not like change. If you have background color applied, it's not gonna. The background color is not going to go with it, okay? It's just going to give you white space. But padding will push, technically padding pushes on the inside, but it kind of doesn't move the content. It just makes the borders of it inflate a little. I feel like I really just made it confusing. Let me put a border around this real quick. So we can have a line. Border 2 pixels, solid, black. All right, so now we have a 2 pixel border around our content, okay? That is all my content. All right. Now with margin, if I add, well, I do have margin. So if we change our top and bottom margin here, we'll go 3% of the viewport width. I'm using relative units here so that that changes when you make it smaller. Now you see how it added white space, right? The border didn't move away from the content at all. It's still touching the edges of the content. This we don't want, okay? What we want to do is add padding This is going to do, actually, let's do top, bottom. Top, and the same way of inserting values for margin applies to padding. So padding 3% of viewport width for top and bottom, and 0 for the left and the right. Oops. Oh, save it. See how it moved it up the top like that? And down here at the bottom? That's what we want. Okay. So we're going to use padding, and we want that because it pushes the color up, right? It pushes that background color up and away. So you're going to use padding for that kind of spacing. All right. There are times when you would use, let me get rid of this border, it's ugly. There are times where you could use margin for stuff like that, but like if you don't have a background color, margin would be fine. But for now, use padding because that gives you that space and it makes it a lot easier to read. Okay. So we took the margin off the H3, but there's still space right here because of the paragraph tag, which is fine. Trying to think, we have 20 minutes. What else? Oh, let's do the images actually. We're not going to get into typography today, but let's do images. All right, so that's some basic styling stuff. Let me collapse these. Let's kind of talk about these images. So in order to make these images fluid so they will change their dimensions, we need to set up some rules about what their widths should be, okay? What their dimensions should be. So one of those rules that we do, we're going to say that the image tag itself needs to always be 100%. Its width needs to always be 100% of its container, whatever container it's in. So we'll always try to just be the exact same size as the container, okay? That container being fImage, all right? So then fImage, oops, fImage, that's not a class, fImage needs to be, this can be whatever percentage of its parent that you want it to be, all right? Right now we could set it to 100, we could set it to 50, 30, 20, whatever. You set it to whatever percentage you want, and then the image inside of it is going to be 100% of that. Does that make sense? So say I want to have 3 images, I have 4 images, maybe I want them all in a row horizontally, all right? So then I would say width of this one needs to be 25% of its parent, because then that gives you have 4 of them, 25% is how you split up 100% by 4, right? They're not going to line up horizontally right now, but this just gives you, they're all going to be the same width. Does that make sense? All right. So now if I change my browser dimensions, see how they get smaller? Whereas before they didn't do that. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. Which one? This one? This is a model made by a friend of mine. He's a game designer and he published a board game, self-published a board game like 5 years ago. And as part of like Kickstarter rewards for it, anybody that did at a certain level, he made like personalized avatars. You'd send him a picture and he'd build a model. I have one too, but I don't know where the image is. Okay, right. So, yes. Where are we going with this? So that's how you make a fluid image. You have a container that adjusts itself according to its parent, and it can be whatever dimensions you want. But then you have an image inside of that container, and that image is always going to be 100% width. All right, you don't set the height, you just set the width. You set the width, and the height takes care of itself. It keeps its proportions. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of? Yeah? So the box that the image is inside of, the wrapper that the image is inside of, that's what changes dimensions. Okay? The image always stays 100% of whatever that is. Yeah? Good. Okay, good. It's really simple. It's really simple. It's not difficult. And getting them to show up horizontally is really simple, but I don't want to get into it today. I feel like that's going to be even more. Okay, So what I would like for Thursday, I want you to get your HTML set. All right. I want you to write out your HTML as much as possible. I don't care about your CSS yet. Okay. What I want you to do is just consider your content, get your sections, write all your sections, work, from general to specific. Think about how you want to organize those sections. I think in the assignment description, this is kind of technically, you should think about it like a portfolio of the projects you've done this semester. Okay, so a couple of those JPEGs, right? That with the web version JPEGs that we made for like the portfolio and the series of 3, use those. Maybe you could show, so you could have one of those in there. So you need like an image in each section. You should have a section that is just an about you, right? Hi, I'm a student, I'm a senior, whatever. This is what I want to do with my life. I like the color orange. I don't know. Just whatever you want. Just some text and some images. We're not worried about indentation. We're not worried about size. We're not worried about typography. We're not worried about styling at all yet. Okay? Just get your sections set. So what I'd like on Thursday is as much of your HTML done as possible. All right? You should have at least 5 sections made and then stuff in 3 of those sections at the very, very least. You should be able to finish it. It wouldn't take you very long. Okay?
And not the CSS stuff.
No CSS yet. Yep. No CSS yet.
So we should have it done before we get to class?
Yes, have it done before you come to class.
Got it.
Okay? I'll make an announcement about it. Have it done before you get to class. All right, that way we can keep kind of rolling. I want to give you time to work on Thursday, but we'll see what happens. Okay? Yeah? All right. Okay. Good. We're done.